Welcome to Whatif tutorials. In this tutorial we will be looking at an overview of the standard costing module. We'll look at configuration, purchased items costing, made items costing, bill of materials, made items, labour operations, and then labour and overhead cost rates. Configuration, you assign first of all symbols to dimensions. You can have a maximum and minimum value. You have a unit of measure applicable to the dimension, and you have the number of decimals that you want to show in the dimension. That's the dimensions. In the configurator you can create item lists, like lists of fabric and so on. The items are entered into the list here, or added to the list I should say. And then you can choose a list when customizing an item. Typically in the quotes module, these lists become available to select from. Okay, let's look at the item master. The item master has code, description, dimension, made source is made or purchased, sold or not. It's in there by factory, it's ordered or stock, it's unit of measure, standard cost, supplier, lead time, has dimensions or not, is active or not, has a category, group, and 3 user-defined classes. So let's just look at a purchased item. When you create an item, you select from the item types. This is a purchase item for use in stock. It has a code, description, a category, and it has no dimensions and it's not configured. If you were to have an item that is purchased for order, made to order or purchased to order, then you could make this yes, but it's not because it's a stock item. Okay, so we have specifications, which is a long description, instructions, and if it had dimensions, you put in dimensions. You can put in your user-defined classifications as required in there. You can store a picture. Okay, so that's the specifications. The cost details, you have your supplier, brings in the currency and the gross price, less discount, exchange rate, net local. Landed costs are added in here to give you a landed cost per unit, and then if the buyer unit is different from the stock unit, there's a conversion factor to give you a cost per stock unit. Sell details, if there are sell details, you then enter the sell price and gross and discount there. So that's a purchased item. Made items, if we look at a made item here, let's look at this one. Its cost is built up by a bill of materials and labour and overhead. So we have a bill of materials with all of the items in the bill. You can add items to the bill, select an item to add, and we'll cancel that though. And you can edit them, and you can see here that each item can have a formula. So the formula refers to dimensions, and you have the formula here, which gives you a quantity there. Okay, so you've brought in a formula. You can delete the formula if you don't want it. The cost per unit, 1975, you can see here how it's made up from the purchased item details that were in the item master. So that's the bill of materials. Labour and overhead, we have a list of labour and overhead operations there. Each operation has a machine, and or set up or run, one or the other or both. Machine minutes, manning for setup, run operation, run machine minutes, run manning. All of that converts to labour minutes and labour rate efficiency to give you a labour cost and an overhead cost, because as overhead cost is associated with labour, so that we get our total labour and overhead costs there. So that's how we build up our made item cost, bill of materials, labour and overhead. Next, I want to just briefly show you the labour and overhead master files. We have machines. Each machine has a labour rate code assigned to it, and there's a labour rate per minute, efficiency. So those are used in standard as a standard in labour operations. I just now want to show you how we calculate the labour rate per minute. So we go in labour overheads, standard direct labour rates. You're using this as an example. The labour rate per minute is derived from the number of employees, average salary, ordinary hours per week, weeks available reduced by leave to net weeks worked, overtime factors, overtime assumptions, average per employee per week, allowances up to 6. You can specify each allowance applicable to ordinary and overtime and on-cost percentages, payroll tax, long service leave, etc. And you can specify these as you require. And those then give you a direct labour rate per minute. So that's how you work out your labour rates. And any of these rates you can then use as a default in your work centre. So we've only got one per machine here. So machine 1 only has one code, but you could create more codes for machine 1 and then decide which one to use in the machine standard. Now let's have a look at the overhead. Machine overhead rates are created in sets of actual. So take this set here for chairs. It's sets of machines, so you can add machines in here to create more machines within this set. The reason for this is that you have factory-wide overheads that need to be allocated. So you can see here that you've got a total of 2 million, which is allocated over 3 machines. So the system allows you to allocate factory-wide overheads over the machines that are going to be operating. So you can get a machine, bring a machine in, add it to the list, then go in and do its overheads. So let's edit this. So in here we have, first of all, the machine hours that have to be determined. With machines you can have several detailed machines making up one machine, and each machine has available days, shifts per day, hours per shift, total machine hours available, and then efficiency to give you standard hours per annum. And that they are the standard hours that are going to flow through here to give you a base for recovering your overhead costs. Your overhead costs consist of labour, and you can add people in here to determine your labour cost. Okay, or you can actually add a set of people in here. And they then total. Okay, so I don't want to waste time on this. This is all covered in detailed tutorials. Okay, so we use that and it gives us our total indirect costs, further allowances, on costs. These are on costs applying to salary, but they don't include such things as annual leave or that, because that's included in this base pay. Motor vehicles, other costs. Then you've got your other overheads. These are the standard overheads here, but you can have 3 user-defined overheads, and you can have an all other section where you can add other overheads like so, and you then build up to all others. Okay, so what we see here is the overhead for this particular machine. So that brings that into here. So then you've got your factory-wide overheads. The factory-wide overheads have to be entered, obviously, and they're entered here. And then you do an allocation based on the allocation method. The allocation methods are indirect labour, total overhead, machine hours, and there's 3 user-defined ones, or there's no method, in which case you just simply allocate the dollars to the machines. Okay, so you can then do the allocation, and it'll calculate the allocation to each machine there. So that's how you do your overhead sets. And then once again, each your machine standard, you go in here, you have to select an overhead set to use to apply the rate for that machine. So that's how you calculate overheads. Alright, there's a hell of a lot of other things that I could talk about, but they are covered in detail in the costing tutorials. So at that point I'll end this tutorial.